will call to order this meeting of the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee for Tuesday, September 6, 2016. Roll call? Do we not? We don't do that? Okay, well, never mind. We're skipping that. Citizens' comments? Any citizens' comments? Any non-citizens' comments? We're good on that.
People from other states?
Okay, approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second that.
All right. I'm bad with names too. So. All right, consider number 4, consideration of items removed from the consent agenda, if any. Anybody got anything they wanted removed? We approved them, so we're good. All right, request to recommend to Common Council approval of budget resolution number 22-2016, transferring $1 million from the long-term debt proceeds to the UW Marshfield Wood County STEM project, presented by you.
I'm Keith today.
All right, Keith, go ahead.
I'll be getting to the next 2 items. As you remember, at the council meeting on August 23rd, the council did approve moving forward with making the commitment or the payment for the STEM project, our $1 million contribution in 2016 rather than 2017. It had once been 2016, the county was going to make their payment, city in 2017, but in looking at the debt schedule and some of the things we're facing in 17, the finance director had recommended bumping that up to 16. Council was supportive of that. This resolution would allow us to actually transfer the monies from long-term debt proceeds to the proper fund to make that payment for the STEM project. I understand the groundbreaking is happening very shortly, so that's moving forward, and staff would recommend approval.
Sure. I have a question.
Okay.
3 questions, in fact, Steve.
Sure.
Do you have any idea if the University Center Commission has the entire sum of money needed to complete or start the building?
They have the money pledged to complete or start the building. They raised, obviously, the $1 million from the city, the $1 million from the county have both been pledged, and they have, I think, between $3.5 and $4 million pledged. Now, when those monies have come in, are they still coming in over the next year or two? I don't know, but they have the monies raised through pledges to complete the work.
Okay, then the other question I have is the money that we are contributing towards this particular project, is that money going to stay in the hands and control of the University Center Commission?
Yeah, they are overseeing the project. The
I didn't ask that.
Right. The
I want to know where the
is
money
overseeing
is.
this work. Yeah.
Where is the money?
The-
Is it in the hands of the City-County Commission, or is it in the hands of the foundation?
Oh, I see where you're going.
Yeah.
You mean similar to the villas that we went through? Yeah. I believe that the money will be administered by the commission. I'm not sure whose physical hands it will be in.
I think that's very important.
It's totally their oversight.
Alana might know the answer to that. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer, but she might.
Hi, Alana.
Hi, sorry I'm late.
No, we're talking about the STEM project where we're looking at making our $1 million contribution, and Pete is asking who is actually overseeing the funds? Is it the commission?
Foundation.
It is the foundation.
It is.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
I couldn't remember, because I thought that they were gonna have Gordy sign up.
Off all the checks, and then they went back and forth on that. I
Yeah, I'm
can't
pretty sure the
remember.
foundation's doing it, and they're covering that additional
48.
Well,
Okay.
underage,
You mean the amount of money that's been pledged but hasn't come in as yet?
right?
Okay.
But no, because we were short. We had that conversation, didn't we?
No,
No.
it
Well,
went
what's-
over. The project was $48,000 over budget, and they signed a commitment letter, the foundation,
To cover that.
It's
cover
gonna
that.
cover that.
Okay, this is more than I knew. Okay.
Well, I have a problem with giving the money to a foundation. I would feel more comfortable with a governmental entity to have the oversight of the money.
Well, the problem, I think, is, and correct me if I'm wrong, those of you who are on the commission, is the commission's not really a legal entity. I mean, they're the ones who make the decisions, but as far as where monies would be housed, they don't really have a place, I suppose, to house it anyway, right?
We don't. I don't see, in fact, ours would be through either the county, because Mike Martin was there at one meeting and Keith Stry had
Right,
some
correct.
conversation with him. So because it can't be either of those, neither the city nor the county wish to
Yeah.
manage it, it
Right.
then lies to the foundation, because I don't think there's anyone else to do it, is my understanding.
Okay.
I have a real problem with foundations handling money. I mean, it's just my own personal thing, because
From an accountability standpoint?
accountability standpoint and legal standpoint, what if the, I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
saying that if there are some bad decisions being made outside our circle, we're on the end of the food chain. We can't do anything at this point anymore.
Yeah.
But if it were with a governmental entity, we have some recourse. But then again, I don't want to hold up a project, okay, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I just have a problem with that.
Kind of playing off what Alana was saying, I imagine the commission wouldn't have had any problem if the city or county would come forward and said that they would be the ones to handle it. But I can guarantee you that you're right, neither the city nor the county wants to be responsible for handling and administering these funds.
And the commission specifically did the plan, the budget, and so it's only through these parameters. We're not saying foundation carte blanche, you get whatever you want up to these numbers. We already have the architectural plan drawn, we have everything agreed upon and done and approved on behalf of the county and city.
Right, that I understand.
And I understand pledges, some of them are coming in over a period of time,
Yeah.
but he asked earlier whether or not all the monies were there, and it sounds like apart from that $48,000, the monies are there to complete the work that's being proposed.
Well, how
And that's here
is the Rail Corporation handling that, or Mr. Rail? How is he handling that? Is he giving the money to the foundation to disperse?
Yes, that's who collected the pledges. Yes.
Okay.
Well, and don't forget, for our library project, it was the Marshfield Area Community Foundation that collected all
Well,
the monies
that's,
as well.
that's
So
right.
Mhm.
we used them for that purpose, as a 501c whatever.
Could we have somebody present from the university and the foundation next time at the council meeting when this comes up?
We could ask them to give us updates, and that would be a good time to maybe have somebody there.
I think
from the
would be
financial part.
beneficial to all.
Okay, sure. I will note that. Any other questions? I'm sorry, I'm not the chair.
Any other questions?
I was pretending to be one though for a second, wasn't I?
But you can take it now. Go. Any other questions? So, we're recommending to the Common Council approval of budget resolution number 22-2016.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All right, number 6.
All in favor?
All in favor, sorry.
Aye.
Aye.
Number 6, request to recommend to Common Council approval of budget resolution number 23-2016, transferring $50,000 in long-term debt proceeds and $32,000 of fund balance to development incentives TIF number 7 for the Midwest Auto Movers Development Agreement.
Thank you. At the last council meeting on August 23rd, we went into closed session and came out of it and approved a development agreement with Midwest Auto Movers for a project in Yellowstone Industrial Park. As part of that, the city will be asking them to pay $10,000 an acre, as we always do. That's where the $32,000 comes from. But then we always refund that money if, in fact, they complete the project as planned. So that's where the $32,000 would come from. The $50,000 would be an incentive to the company for the construction. And in TIF 7, and with the amount of increment that they'll be bringing in, that'll get paid back in about 6 to 7 years. So again, council was supportive of the development agreement and approved it. But in order to make the payment happen, we need to move the monies to the proper account. And staff would recommend approval of this budget resolution, which does that.
Okay, so recommended action, recommend to the Common Council approval of budget resolution number 23-2016.
I'll second it, but,
Go ahead. Nope.
I do have a question on it. You know, part of the discussion we had the last time around was whether or not, I think it was the board, Dan Connect that brought
Plan
that up.
Commission?
Is the paving,
Yeah.
are they going to?
They are.
They are going
They are.
to pave
They are
more
gonna-
than they originally said they
Correct, they're
would?
gonna pave everything that we wanted them to pave initially.
Okay.
So that $50,000 incentive that we give them, a good share of that will be going to meet the paving requirement that the code calls for.
Okay.
So we
Which is
have
kind of a
mo-
win-win.
So we
I'm
have a
so- I'm sorry.
motion and a second, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Number 7, request to approve policy number 3-850, compensation for elected officials, presented by Jennifer Raku, Human Resources Manager, Assistant to the City Administrator.
So as we're continuing to go through just policy cleanup, one of the policies that we came across was this compensation for elected officials. And in looking at that policy, there were some jobs that had been elected and are now appointed. So we just wanted to do some brief cleanup. It was the city clerk position, the city assessor, and then an assistant city attorney, which is no longer active. So it was a really brief cleanup to just remove those job titles from the policy going forward. So we're requesting approval of Personnel Policy 3.850, compensation for elected officials.
Okay.
Also move. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, number 8, request to authorize request for proposals for contracted assessing services, presented again by Jennifer.
Thanks again. So in follow-up to May, when we had the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee meeting in regard to assessing services, the committee had approved a formal RFP and some overlap of services for the assessing department as we look to move to a new model. If you recall, our current assessor is going to be retiring next summer, and we're looking to move that to a contracted role instead of an employee position. So since that initial review, we did go forward and develop a RFP for the contracted services assessment. We are looking to accept proposals as of October 2nd and hope to have a selection completed by November 23rd. So what we've done is attached the formal RFP for your review. We are looking at a 3-year contract, so it would be for the annual assessment years of 2017, 2018, 2019, with a wrap-up of the contract in 2020. Overlap of that position would be between January of 2017 and then June of 2017. So with that, we're requesting approval to submit the RFP for assessing services for the city.
Motion? Second? I'll second. All those in favor to authorize staff to solicit proposals for our contracted assessment services?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Number 9, review possible creation of an administrative services department, presented by Jennifer McHugh.
All right, thank you again. This is going back to the 2014 staffing study. Recently, over the past, I think, several months, we've talked about the potential creation of an administrative services department. However, at the most recent meeting back in May, several questions were asked in regard to how we would make this work. Specifically, the questions were looking for examples that could have been solved better if there was an administrative services director in place, who would be considered for the job, and how can the person fit in these additional duties with their current job responsibilities, what would they have to pass downstream to additional staff, what would the cost be, and then what would we do with directors reporting to directors. So a team of department heads got together and looked at what the new model would look like, or what we could have found that would have been done differently with this new model. And honestly, we couldn't look at any specific examples to say we would have handled this in a different manner. However, we do still think that that might be beneficial at some point. There have been some changes since we brought this forward back in May, and really that has to do with the assessing department in the RFP that we're going out for next month then. What we would like to do is, with the assessing department, really kind of put aside the whole administrative services department at this time, but look to add the assessing services contract under the direction of the finance director. We looked at other potential placements under other department heads and couldn't find one that we felt it would fit quite as well under. So what we're looking for is to really bring that administrative services department to a close right now. We would like to potentially look at that in the future, but right now what we're looking for is approval to bring the assessing services contract under the finance director. What we would do is look for a formal a formal job evaluation once we've assigned the duties, and we could resubmit that job. The job description has been attached in your packet, as well as just kind of the overall summary, but if you do have questions in regard to kind of the request for placement, that's what we're looking to answer for you today. So again, we're recommending the administrative services department go on hold, but to move those assessing services under the finance director.
Well, it appears to me that, Steve, you're just about out of a job.
Hardly. If you want to come join me any day, though, you're welcome to sit beside me.
So is that something you want us to vote on now, or do we have time to digest that and wait till somebody comes on board before we would
Do that.
move that position?
Well, Let me take that. I mean, I think what we're trying to say here is we want to see conceptually if you're on board with this idea. I mean, it's obviously not going to happen today, but because somebody's going to have to oversee the contract and work with the contractor, and somebody's going to have to be responsible for the two employees who are likely to be left behind, you know, the on-site presence that we're going to have even without a city assessor, it needs to be placed somewhere. You know, what Jennifer's saying basically is we think that the finance department is the best place for it. You can argue about that and say that there's other places that might fit better. But there will have to be somebody. As we move toward that point, we go through the RFP, we pick a contractor. They will only be here like, you know, 1 day a week or that kind of thing. You know, that we're going to be doing 1-800 so-and-so for your, you know, talking to the assessor, but we're going to have a local presence where you can come in, meet with somebody, look at your file. But somebody's going to have to be in charge of those two people and in charge of making sure the contractor does what they're supposed to do, that they meet the obligations under the agreement. And we're trying to see if you think we're on the right track here, just in general, and then secondly, you know, is the finance department the best place for that?
Well, from my personal standpoint,
You did it the right way.
What did he do?
give me the finger.
Raised his hand. No, he raised his hand. You're just like,
Oh.
There was two up.
No, seriously though, I think that if this first part is what Alana said before. I think that we need to fill that position first, then come back again and review the relationship. And I think finance is probably the most important, because they work with numbers, both of them do, and I think it's very important for them to exist in that relationship. But I think we ought to go ahead first with this, and internally, I think you as a staff, I think, need to really think this thing through, because you're going to get some resistance from some areas on the council for doing this. So, and even from the staff level for that matter. So I'd be in favor of going ahead with this contract and revisiting this whole issue of the relationship or the rewriting of the finance director's position description to make this stuff work. No.
And again, that won't be a huge rewrite. If you picture what is that person's job description, it would be adding responsibility for the remaining employees and for overseeing the contract.
Right.
But we would obviously then have to resubmit that to our compensation consultant and let them review it.
I think it's a good idea. It's long overdue, so.
Your turn.
I'll shut up.
What duties that that position currently holds will have to get shoved, because as I'm looking right now at the job description, I'm seeing 101% item breakdown here, which is already overloaded.
Haven't you ever heard haven't you ever heard athletes say that they gave 110%? No.
So that's where the extra 9%,
That's
no.
it, yeah. No.
What are we looking at as far as some of the duties being potentially redistributed?
Well, you know, we could get additional feedback from the contractor if you wanted to wait until that point, but ultimately, right now, it is just as Steve said, the oversight of the two current employees that will still be city employees, and then ensuring that the contracted assessor is meeting those requirements for the tax roll, the submission, the deadlines, those types of
And
things.
that will take time, so I'm wondering, you know.
Yeah, you're basically asking, could Keith, for example, send some stuff down toward Amy or toward Chris, other people on staff, to free up more time to do that, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I guess what we're saying is, we don't suspect it's going to take as much time as you might think, but then maybe we're wrong.
Well, we're looking at an outside contracted entity that
Well, true.
will need some potential.
True, yeah,
oversight.
somebody's going to have to make sure that, in fact, the contractor is doing what he's charged to do by the agreement in terms of number of hours at City Hall, you know, record keeping, responding timely to phone calls and those types of things. So, you know, it may be more timely than I realized.
And there's a slight difference, city employees who have a stake in the city versus a contracted who simply is doing a job, who maybe doesn't have the same stake.
True. I mean, you know, Point and Rapids and other places have somebody that they contract with, but there is a different, you know, level of service because the person's not here 40 hours a week. And like I said, you have to call them on their toll-free number or whatever to get your questions answered. So there is a difference between that and what we have today.
Will the people that are in that office still remain to be in that office, even though we have a contracted services?
The presumption is that right now, Jen and I have met with someone who does this for other communities, not somebody who's necessarily pining for this job, but apparently what happens typically is you need, you know, 1.5 or 2 people still on staff locally to deal with the work that has to happen here at City Hall with, again, inquiries, maintenance of files, a variety of things. But, you know, what we're asking for in proposals, if you look at the RFP, we are asking for them to tell us what they think needs to be held behind. So in other words, if you say, I'll do the job in the city of Marshfield for X thousand dollars, we want you to say, what does that include? Do we need to have 2 people to support you here? What do you think they'll do? We're looking for input from them as to what they need on the city's end for what they're asking to do. So, but right now our presumption is that the 2 people we have today will likely still be here when it's over. The savings we'll get will be because it's going to be a lesser price than the position we have now with Benny's and all that thrown in.
Theoretically, of course.
It would happen.
I guess I see the person or entity or whatever we hire would be fairly well versed in their job. I mean, we certainly have, different communities, different municipalities hire, townships, whatever, hire assessors to do jobs like that, and they have a simple process that they go through. Not that it's necessarily easy or fast, but it certainly is. A computer program, which I know we talked about, obviously, getting. The concern that I don't necessarily have a problem with it being under finance, but I think there could be a conflict because of that. So we need this much money in the city, therefore properties are now gonna raise X number of dollars. At least it could be perceived to the public as a conflict. And so that's a concern, and I see it as negligible in that regard, because I know that assessors, I know that cities are deemed to have to be in a certain percentage. I mean, you can't be too low, you can't be
Right.
too high, you have to be within a certain percentage, and there are benchmarks at the Department of Revenue. So it's not that we can go willy-nilly and, everybody's just jacked up $20,000. We can't just do that. So, so I think that can be alleviated, but I think the public perception is going to be, it's an issue.
Well, I don't know how many people in the public know this right now, but right now Joan Spencer, our assessor, reports to me. And believe me, I'm starting to look at the budget numbers, and it's my recommended budget that you look at in 6 weeks. And, if I could get more money out of the system, I'd be a prime candidate for that. So I don't know that shifting it from me to the finance director really changes that much. But I do respect the concern. Let me say one other thing. When you mentioned before that, you said theoretically we'll save money. That's a good question. But Point and Rapids are spending $50,000 and $48,000 on their contracts respectively, annual. And, our assessor with benefits is well beyond that. So we believe we're going to get quite a few proposals, and we're pretty sure, in fact, we're very confident that we'll end up saving money. Not in 2016, because we're going to have an overlap when the two try and mesh so that the new assessor can figure out our system, but from 17 and beyond, that we should be saving a considerable amount of money.
But I assume too, though, you'll be looking to give whoever takes this under their wing a raise.
Well, they'll be doing a contract, a 3-year agreement, and their request might be, I want you to pay me X money in 2017, X plus 3,000 in 2018, X plus 5,000 in 2019. But whatever they propose in their agreement that we sign on to, they will be locked into that. They won't be getting, the percentage increase that city employees get or unions get. They're going to get exactly what their contract spells out.
I think I meant to say, like, if it falls under Keith's umbrella.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
The overseer.
So we would work with Carlson Detman in that manner to have it reviewed. Quite honestly, they would look at the scope. The finance director currently has direct reports under him. We would look at exactly how the wording would fit. But they would also look at their comparables to see kind of where that finance director is sitting in addition to others. So not necessarily an increase, but very well could be.
What is the finance director's salary now?
I don't have that handy.
I can pull it up.
He's at the same level as several other department heads, police chief and a couple of others, but I don't know his actual pay right now. While Jen's looking that up, I should tell you that, with our staffing study and the changes we've made in the last year, we've submitted a number of positions to Carlson Detman, our compensation consultant, because it appears they've taken on more duties. And in some cases, they've recommended bumping that person up a pay grade. In other cases, they've said, no, don't see enough difference to warrant it. So I don't want to prejudge what may or may not come from this. We've seen both happen.
I was just going to add, Steve did bring in department heads to talk about this, and we all felt that it did fit best under finance department. And the reason is because between the finance department and the city assessor, they do the filing of all the reports with the Department of Revenue. And you really need to have somebody that has that knowledge to make sure we're meeting all the deadlines, because it could impact our revenues that we get in. So without somebody overseeing that, we could be hurt.
No, I'm not asking for anybody, not to have oversight of it. I think it's important. It is the lifeblood of our, of our financial wellness, so to speak. But, it is like Lana said, though, adjustments need to be made. And I still don't like Carlson Detman.
You've dealt with them at Wood County as well.
Yeah.
No, I think
agree with you.
we've had bumps in the road with them. I think we've generally been pleased with them at staff level. But it's not a science, it's an art. When they look at these pay grades, and Jen talks to them, I do too, and they say, well, here's what we're seeing, and our best take is that you ought to bump this one down a grade or bump this one up a grade. But you could argue some of those recommendations too. It's not perfection. It's just their best shot as professionals.
Well, we all understand that department heads need to be paid what is appropriate for them to do their job and to retain them. The worst thing you can do is create a morale problem if you're out of kilt, with financials of individuals. Well, you know how it goes.
I do. The most important thing in my mind right now as we talk about this is that somebody has to be, have it under their domain to follow up on this. The worst thing you could do is sign a contract with an assessor and say, great, they're a professional, they'll take care of that part now, and not know whether or not they're returning phone calls on time, whether they're getting reports done on time, whether or not they're even, doing the responsibilities in their contract as specified. Somebody needs to make sure that those responsibilities are carried out.
Well, you mentioned that Stevens Point and Wausau has similar operations of this type.
Point and Rapids. I think Wausau is actually looking for an on-staff assessor, but Stevens Point and Wisconsin Rapids have the very same system that we're talking about today.
Have you heard any positive or negative from those people?
I think we have. You've talked to
Yeah, I've
people
talked
there.
to Rapids specifically in regard to their experience, and they've been pleased with their current model. It's been working really well for them.
Yeah. It's a good model. I mean, I don't think you could find many cities our size across Wisconsin that still have on-staff assessors when you consider the pay and benefits for a position like that. They're almost all contracting with companies. And again, I say one more time, and I say this to people watching us on this taping, that it will mean you can't come in any time of the day and see the assessor. I mean, you're going to have to find out what day they're coming in. Oh, they're coming in Thursday from 1 to 5? Okay, great. Can I make an appointment? But given given the cost of the service, this model makes sense. It just does.
Okay.
On a note regarding the conversations you've had with the Rapids, did you get any insight on as to who's overseeing those contracted assessing duties?
I didn't specifically ask that question, but we could find out.
We can find out.
Just curious.
That's a good question. Yeah, that is a good question. What department is it? Or
Yeah,
is-
who's overseeing those
Yeah.
contracts and whatnot?
I know it isn't. It's not the city administrator, because neither one of those communities has a city administrator. So
Okay.
that part I can tell you.
Check that off the list. Okay. So you think you're safe?
Now I'm really talking myself out of a job, are you?
You gotta take a serious look
I'm
at
digging a
that.
hole as we go along.
We can make a huge savings just like
I know where it's
this.
coming from. I'm updating my resume right now as we go.
All right, so are we looking for any sort of action on that tonight?
We put down the recommended action as discretion of the committee. I think we're really just getting a sense of where you see this going. It's not going to happen today or tomorrow or next week. I think what I'm hearing is that you recognize that somebody needs to be in control of making sure that the assessor that we're going to take on does what they're supposed to. And at this point, you're not sure if finance is the best place. You're looking for us to do a little bit more background, maybe check with these two communities and see if that's where it's housed there, and come back to you. Am I somewhere on the right track?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And I'll get back to you with the rate of pay. My system's just not loading up
Oh,
here.
that's okay.
Anything
Sounds
further
good.
on that? All right. Number 10, receive update on operation of the joint municipal court with the Village of Spencer and a request to join by the Village of Stratford, presented by Steve Barker.
Thank you. This is truly an FYI item. I just want to keep it posted. You remember last year, we signed an agreement with the Village of Spencer to take them on in our municipal court. They didn't want to have their citizens and their police officers driving from Spencer to Wausau any more than we wanted to have our citizens and officers driving from Marshfield to Wisconsin Rapids. It's been a good relationship. It's gone really well, very smooth. The only issue that we've seen in the first 8 months is, or at least in the first 6 months, that our statistics show is that they've been using us a lot. In other words, I don't mean that in a bad way. They've written way more tickets than they did in 2015. If you saw my, way more. And you know what? They told us they were going to.
Of course.
The
Don't have to drive
police
as far.
chief, yeah, the police chief said to us, that our officers don't feel very good about writing tickets if we know that not only do they have to go to Wausau, but they have to pay the court costs. And if we can do a municipal court, the cost will be cut in half for a citation, and, it'll be local. So they had written more than, I think, 224 in the first 6 months of 2016. They wrote 150 in the entire year 2015. So they're on track to write 3 times as many tickets this year as last year. Still, the number compared to the amount that come from our officers is on the low end. So court is not backing up. The judge is able to handle the cases and move them forward. So I just wanted you to know things are going well. The one thing we did do well in our agreement with Spencer is that we have an annual review on the cost that we're charging them. So as the number of tickets go up, if it causes us some more problems, some more expenses, more time by our court clerk, we're going to be passing some of that on to the Village of Spencer. But they're happy with it. They're very thrilled with it. One more note to throw in before. The Village of Stratford, I think, has been talking to the Village of Spencer, and they would like to join us as well. They, right now, write the same number of citations that Spencer did before they joined us. And again, I'm not saying it's not a good deal. I think it might be a very good deal. We've more than covered our costs. That's the plan. But I did say to them, we'd like to let a little bit more experience go by with Spencer before we recommend this. At the earliest, I'd like to take on Stratford, if you guys are supportive, and if the council is as a whole, would be 2018. I want to definitely have another year of experience with Spencer before we do that, because there might be some bugs that we still haven't worked out. There might be some backlog that comes from the additional citations. But I want to know, too, if you're willing to consider doing the same thing with Stratford, if it makes sense in a year or so. No, that's all I have.
I have a quick question. Are we charging pro rata at all based upon the number of tickets or the tickets that go to a trial, or?
It's a
how
certain
are
dollar
we
amount per
doing?
citation that
Okay.
we collect.
All right, fair enough.
And we've got that set up to where we believe it covers our cost, including, software. We had to update our software a little bit this past year. But to answer your question truly, we haven't gotten to the end of a first year, so the financial report is not completed, and that's partly why I don't want to join on with Stratford until we really know that this is working financially as well as logistically.
Okay.
But it's really the main thing I'm telling you tonight is that it's going well with Spencer. And someday we may come back to you and say, would you consider adding Stratford as well if we more than cover our cost, have a little buffer in there to make sure that we're not losing.
Anything else? All right, suggested items for future agendas. Anybody? Going once, going twice? Everybody want to leave?
Good job. Well done, Rebecca.